Good morning. Happy Monday. I am going to be filming a video for you about where we are going next. I know so many of you are excited about animals and different plants in Australia. And so I thought I would start off this morning by reading to you some of our World Atlas facts and stuff about Oceania or Australia. So there's a big debate as far as what we call the continent. Half of the scientists believe that we should call the continent of Australia Oceania because it contains, you can kind of see here in the picture, more than just the country of Australia. It also includes all these little islands out here and New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Fiji. So some scientists believe that we should be referring to it as Oceania, where other people believe that Australia is also a country and a continent. So I may be using both of those terms, but know that they mean the same thing. Australia and Oceania are considered a continent for our studies today. Okay, so I'm going to read to you a little bit of that this map has here on this side, and then I will try and give you as best as I can a steady hand of the visuals to look at on a map. Okay, so put on your seatbelts because we're going to take a flight over the ocean from Africa to Australia. All right. So in this atlas, it is referred to as Oceania. You can kind of see there at the top. Ocean is in the word, ocean, and then there's an I and an A, Oceania. Now I'm curious about what this book will say. Let's check it out real quick before I get started. I won't have time to read to you both of these today, but most likely next Monday we'll read this one. So in our National Geographic's Atlas, they refer to Australia as a continent. So it may sound confusing at first, but as long as you know that Australia is a country inside the continent, that also could be called Oceania, you're going to be good. Okay, let's get started. If you spin a globe until it looks as if it's mostly covered by sea, you'll be looking at Oceania. Only 33 million people live here. 20 million of them in Australia, 3.7 million in New Zealand, and 9.3 million in the islands of the South Pacific. Now, if you guys think back to our Africa presentations, Audrey did one on Cairo, or her presentation was on Egypt. And she mentioned the population in Cairo, which is the big city in Egypt, and it had billions of people. And they don't even have here half of a billion people in Australia. So when you think about the land, it's probably not going to be as populated as in some parts of Africa. Okay, Pacific Islands. There are, as you can tell, trying to keep this as steady as I can. It's kind of hard with actually, I wonder if I turn my light off if the reflections will be better. Let's see if that works a little bit better. Okay, so here we have lots of islands. You can see all these little orange spots and dots. Those are different islands, and those are in the Pacific Ocean. So those share the ocean that we share, that we live off of the coast, right? Okay, so the physical features, there are between 20,000 and 30,000 islands in the Pacific. Now that fact is stating in the whole Pacific Ocean. So that also includes Hawaii and all the little islands around Hawaii, but those are not a part of Oceania, the continent, okay? New Guinea is the largest land mass in the area, covering 488,398 square miles, though half of it extends into Southeast Asia. So I'm going to try and give you a really cool close up of this. So this right here, the green is showing you the part of Papua New Guinea that is in the continent of Australia or Oceania. But see this purple part here? That's actually a part of Asia. Now, that would be really interesting to research to figure out, well, how can half of a country be on one continent and the other half be on the other continent? It's still the same country, right? Maybe we'll have to find out more. That might be something that really interests you. Okay. At the other end of the scale, right, so they're saying that's the biggest island. Now, at the other end, we're going to be looking at the smallest island. There are numerous uninhabited coral atolls and mountainous islands covered in lush tropical rainforest. So uninhabited means that humans do not live there. Animals and plants and other living things live there, but no humans. People and places. The small islands of Oceania are incredibly varied. The tribal groups of Papua New Guinea speak 820 different languages, while the federal states of Micronesia occupy 607 islands. Suva is the capital and the largest city in Fiji. I know that some of you are studying Spanish. In the country of Fiji, in Spanish, we would say Fiji, which is kind of cool. Okay, climate and weather. The weather in this region is tropical all year round, with a hotter and more humid period between November and April, which is also a hurricane season. Natural resources and marine life. For the islanders of Oceania, the sea life of the Pacific Ocean is a major source of food and trade. Many people continue to fish and farm in a traditional way, but modern fishing methods have significantly reduced fish stocks, especially tuna. So what that means is they are saying that traditional fishing methods used to really work for them. And then when huge boats would go with these huge nets and take out thousands and thousands of fish, the fish that they used to fish, the populations are now dwindling and they're having a hard time continuing with that traditional fishing method and receive the same amount of fish that they used to survive off of. The seas of Oceania are host to numerous species of fish and to many types of whale, shark, and other sea creatures. This is also a region of spectacular coral reefs. So if you are really interested in marine animals, this is a great continent to study marine life or specific animals that you might be interested in off of the Oceania coast. The environment. The Pacific Ocean is currently shrinking because of the movement of Earth's tectonic plates. Many of the islands in this region are low-lying, making them particularly vulnerable to rising sea levels. So if they are low, what did they say the term was? Low-lying. That means if they're in the ocean, right? So say this is the ocean, and this is our coast. See, we're up above it, but if it's low-lying, that means it's really close. There's not a lot of hills maybe, or maybe it's only a couple of feet above ground. So as the seas rise, right, when we studied Europe and we learned that in Sweden, the ice is melting and the continent is rising, or the country of Sweden is rising out of the water every year because the weight of the ice has now fallen off as it melted. That means that the sea is also rising, right? Because the ice is melting and going down into the oceans, making the water level rise. And so those low-lying regions are very vulnerable to the rising water of our oceans. Maybe that's something you want to research. The rising of our oceans, and specifically the Pacific Ocean. The increasing temperatures across the globe mean that many of the smaller islands in Oceania may disappear within the next few decades. Now, I know Liam knows a decade is 10 years. So if you don't know, that means in a couple of decades. So it says few. Few usually refers to 3 or more. So maybe in the next 30 years, when you're Miss Kate's age, maybe certain islands may disappear. Crazy, crazy. Now, it gives me, I can open my tab here, and it gives me another tab that's specific to just Australia. And that's going to be the biggest island in Oceania. You can see right here, it's that huge, massive land. But if you notice, this is kind of like a topographical map where you can see the physical features of the land, right? So you can see it's green down here, and then here you can see that it is orange, kind of sandy, and that's going to be because those are deserts, hot, dry parts. Okay, so Australasia. Physical features. Australia is by far the largest island in the region. This, together with the 2 islands of New Zealand, forms a distinctive region within Oceania, sometimes referred to as Australasia. I think that's how you say it. Most of Australia is flat, though a range of mountains, the Great Dividing Range, runs along the northeast side of the country. I don't see it here. Oh, yes, I do. Okay. So if you are going to visit the coral reef, or you want to study the Great Coral Reef, right beside it, here is the dividing range there. And you can kind of see, it's hard to tell because it's right in the crack of the book, but that's going to be the big dividing range on that island. And it's a huge mountain range. Okay. And that runs along the side of the country. By contrast, New Zealand is largely mountainous, with river-formed gravel plains and rugged coastline. And so New Zealand, I don't think I'm going to be able to even show you much of it because it is so small on this map. But maybe in our other atlas that we read another day, it'll be a little bit easier to tell. Okay, people and places. The indigenous people of Australia. Many children ask me what indigenous means. That means that they're the people there that lived on this continent before Europe or those big conquerors came. So in our case, where we live in the United States, our indigenous people are the Native Americans. And they lived off the land before Spain's conquerors came, and Britain and England and all those countries. So Australia also has people that lived off the land for years before Britain decided to take over parts of the land. Okay, so the indigenous people have inhabited, that means that they've lived there, for many of thousands of years and are the oldest surviving culture in the world. So many of you were fascinated with ancient Egypt and their civilization. Maybe you want to study the indigenous people of Australia that are the oldest culture, surviving culture in the world. And I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I think it's the Maori. It's Maori. The Maori people came to New Zealand over 1,000 years ago. Europeans arrived in both countries in the late 18th century, followed more recently by Asians. Sydney is the largest city in Australia with a population of 4.5 million people, although Canberra is the capital. I had a student in my first year teaching. Her name was Sydney, and she was named after the Sydney Opera House in Australia. And my first years at Laporte, I had 2 students that were from Australia. And so I have a lot of cool facts and things that I've learned over the years, but I don't want to give you just a bunch of facts so that you don't get to really study in depth what you want to learn. I'm going to stop us at this point just because I know many of you have other works to get started on. So the next time we do one of these, we are going to start specifically with the climate and weather of Australia. Okay, so your job this week is to be thinking about what specifically you want to study about Australia, Oceania, right? So they have a lot of unique animals that have only been found in Australia. And so I'm trying to find a resource that I can get in time. With the library being closed, I don't have a lot of options, but I would love to find an Australian book of animals so that I can read you a little bit about why they have such a diverse and different set of animals than anywhere else in the world. Okay, so there's a little bit about Australia. I can't wait to continue learning with you guys. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see every one of you today in our one-on-ones. Have a great day. Bye.